You believe with absolute certainty that you are Jesus Christ. Then one morning, a man in a white coat sits you down at a table with two other patients. They believe with the exact same certainty that they are Jesus Christ. What happens to your mind over the next 2 years? In 1959, a psychologist named Milton Rokeach decided to find out. Rokeach taught social psychology at Michigan State University. His real obsession was beliefs. Not what people believed, but how beliefs survived contradiction. Why someone could be shown they were wrong, in plain evidence, and walk away more convinced than before. He had read about a case from 1593. A man in Paris named Simon Morin was locked up after declaring he was Christ. The asylum happened to be holding another man who thought he was God the Father. They were put in the same cell. Within weeks, Simon Morin had abandoned his delusion entirely. Rokeach wanted to try the same thing on purpose. He needed three men, each one absolutely sure he was Jesus Christ, none of them connected to each other before. He searched the state hospitals of Michigan. At Ypsilanti State Hospital, he found them. Clyde Benson was 70 years old, a farmer. His wife had died decades earlier. He had stopped going to church the next Sunday and started saying he was God. By the time Rokeach met him, Clyde had been on the ward for 17 years. Joseph Cassell was 58, French-Canadian. He had spent 20 years writing a novel nobody would publish. Soft-spoken, polite. He believed he had died, been resurrected, and was now living quietly as the returned Christ. Leon Gaber was the youngest, 38, raised by a mother so religiously controlling that she had once tried to commit him by petition. At the start of the study, Leon refused to be called Leon. He called himself Dr. Righteous Ideal Dung. He explained, patiently, that his birth name had been corrupted by demons. All three had been written off. All three were considered untreatable. All three were picked precisely because nobody thought they had anywhere left to fall. On July 1st, 1959, Rokeach moved them. Adjacent beds in the same ward, assigned to the same laundry crew. Same lunch table, 3 meals a day, and every afternoon at 3 o'clock, a 45-minute group meeting in the same small room with the same 3 chairs. On day 1, Rokeach asked each man to introduce himself. Clyde said he was God. Joseph said he was God. Leon said he was God. Rokeach asked the obvious question, how could 3 of you be God? Each man had an answer ready. Joseph said the other 2 were dead. Their bodies were being operated by machines. He was the only real one in the room. Clyde said the other 2 were mentally ill patients who had been deceived. They believed what they were saying, but they were wrong, and you couldn't blame them for being wrong. Leon said the other 2 were what he called hollowed-out instrumental gods. They were real bodies, but the real God, the one called Dr. Dung, had hollowed them out and was speaking through them to test himself 3 contradictory beliefs. 3 perfect explanations. Not one of them collapsed. For the next 2 years, they fought. They argued at breakfast, they argued at lunch, they argued at the 3 o'clock meeting. Clyde, who was old and tired, slapped Leon across the face more than once. Joseph would stand up, declare the conversation beneath him, and walk out. Leon would deliver long sermons that made the other 2 roll their eyes, but none of them gave it up. Rokeach started to escalate. Leon had invented a wife. A woman who lived, he said, on the moon, called Madame Yeti Woman. She was real to him. She wrote him instructions. She was the only being he loved. So Rokeach began forging letters from Madame Yeti. He would write the letter, slip it in with the morning mail, and watch. The first letter told Leon to sing a particular hymn. Leon sang it. The next letter told him to come to the meeting wearing a flower. Leon came with a flower. The next told him to stop calling himself Dr. Dung. Leon refused. The forgeries got more pointed. Madame Yeti Woman began suggesting, gently, that perhaps Leon was not the real Christ after all. Leon got quiet. Then he got suspicious. Then he stopped believing the letters were from her. Joseph received his own forged letters, supposedly from the hospital superintendent, telling him to change his routine. He complied for a few days. Then his delusion absorbed the instructions whole. The superintendent, he decided, must be a lower-level emissary of his. Clyde mostly ignored everything. He was 70. He was tired. He had been on a psychiatric ward for nearly 2 decades, and he had no interest in another argument. After 2 years, Rokeach had nothing. None of the 3 had changed his core belief. Each man still considered himself Jesus Christ. The delusion had bent, accommodated, absorbed, and explained away every single contradiction Rokeach had thrown at it. In 1964, he published the book, The 3 Christs of Ypsilanti. It became a sensation. It was reprinted for decades. In 2017, there was a film with Richard Gere playing Rokeach. But 20 years after the original publication, in 1984, Rokeach wrote an afterword to a new edition. In it, he apologized. He wrote, "I really had no right, even in the name of science, to play God and interfere round the clock with their daily lives." He looked back at the forged letters. He looked back at the manipulation. And he realized something. He had been doing to those three men exactly what their delusions had been doing to him. Refusing to admit he might be wrong. Bending every piece of evidence to fit a belief he had already decided was true. He had walked into Ypsilanti convinced he could break a delusion with logic. And when the delusions wouldn't break, he had escalated, lied, and manipulated. Rather than abandon the experiment, the three Christs of Ypsilanti didn't cure 3 psychiatric patients. It cured one psychologist of the belief that he was qualified to cure them.